I'm Benny Ming, curator of the咏春Museum in Dayton, Ohio. This would be the Series 9. The topic is on the六點半棍 in the Yip system. What you have just saw is the sequence of the六點半棍. Now, I use the word sequence because that is exactly what it is. Most of the family I train with in the Yip system, every one of them has slight variation in their六點半棍. So the key here is not see which sequence is correct, because the sequence could be different and technique could be slightly different. So the key in order to understand the六點半棍is the topic of this tape. In this series, I'm going to break the六點半棍into few progressions based on understanding and progressions of training. First, I will talk about the basic history of the pole. Then, 基本功 basic exercise. Third, the fundamental movements of the pole, and as you already seen, the sequence. And then last is most important is the concept, basic exercise. This is fundamentals because the basic exercise primarily develop the proper attributes that take us in being able to develop the proper mechanics. We're going to break it down into empty hand, single hand exercise, and then double hand exercise. First exercise I want to demonstrate is empty hand. Traditionally we call it 拳狀. Okay. Now up to now you have seen 小拳頭沉標, 標指木人狀. Okay. All of them consist of stances that fit into the 6-gate theories. Okay. But traditionally the pole is coming directly from the Shaolin. So we're going to be introducing what we call 四平太馬, big pole stance. Because in order to hold a longer weapon, heavier weapon, the stance is always the base. So this exercise to develop the proper structure, okay, we call it 拳狀. Again, 拳狀develop the basic fitness, mechanics, and introduce the wide hold stances. But next we have a series of basic exercise is we call 單手連棍. Remember, this is step-by-step progression training of the 6.5 point pole. So for newcomers or beginners, primarily it's for strengthening exercise. So I do not suggest that you use a heavy pole for the single hand, because if you put too much stress with the release of energy, you might not be able to develop your structure. You might even actually strain your body. So this is a one-hand exercise. And you notice, okay, it's approximately inside a fist width. Single hand 蹬棍. Notice the palm is up, palms down. You want to be able to maintain the tip at the same level. The wrists are locked. Elbow is not totally locked. Release the energy, maintain the same level. Next one, same thing, but we go to the side. And then the third one, we go straight. Yat, yi, sa. Yat. You can do 6 of each, 10 of each. Or you can do it together like a set. So, down, side, front. The sequence is the method. Okay, it's important that you start strengthening your mechanics to support the long weapons. The next one, tilt, down. Again, this is the wrist. and proper mechanics, how the joint by elbow supported by the wrist, because the elbow is in place. Next one is the same thing but behind. So we're going to do the back tilt. I'm going to use my left hand. And then last, the importance is maintaining as straight as possible your wrist and produce the energy. To teach you how to fighting, be able to expel the energy, be able to produce the energy or project the energy. So those are 6 basic exercises for single hands. Double hand. As I mentioned before, when you do single hand, it's good to just get a regular pull so your body can get used to it. But eventually, the idea is strengthening up your body so you can handle more heavy weapon. Typical Lokdinpun Guan could be anywhere from 3 pounds up to 6 pounds. In this case, this is approximately 4 pounds. Lokdinpun Guan is considered or called Dan Tao Guan. That means that we use one end. Ability to really generate the force in one end. The first one, called double hand, is Dan Guan. It's like similar to single hand. And you add the body mechanics of the zone. Now, if you just use the hand, the same as one hand. But this one is 2 hand, you're going to be able to use and express the body. The next one, Biu Guan. You notice the motion is out, in, out, in. We complement each other by practicing empty hand and the weapons. The mechanics are consistent. So, for example, if your elbow goes out, there's no way you can do that. There's no way you can do that. So that's why our vertical punch never is like this. Most of our techniques are elbow in. Again, why? Because mechanics. This is much stronger. This is much stronger. This is weak. That's why when we do the technique, this is not a good tansa. Mechanics not good. This is a better punch. This is a weaker punch. Because we're talking about straight, not a hook punch. Proper measurements. Your hands is never more than 1 fist. You always have slightly more. So you don't grab all the way to the end. Okay, but inside a fist width. And then how far does this hand go? Everyone's different. You could have a short guy and tall guy. So you use your own limb to measure. Put it under your armpit. This is the basic grip. Lokdinpun Guan. Lokdinpun Guan. Okay, now we're going to go back into understanding basic movements, such as the basic stances, footwork, and the individual techniques. There are a few simple stances. This is neutral. Okay, most of the time when we start out the pole form, of course, this will be the Ichikimura from the previous forms, but you won't see this in the Lokdinpun Guan form. So really the next one is the horse stance. Okay, this is classical Shaolin stances. Sometimes you see people punching like this. This is called 四平大马. Okay, the next one you have the front stances, which allow you to project energy forward. The next one you have the 丢台马. Okay, look like a back stance, or some people call it a cat stance. So primarily you have those 4 stances. Number 1, neutral. 四平大马, horse stance. This project energy to the side, very strong to the side. The next one, front stance. This project energy forward. The next one, allow you to be able to pivot. Okay, back stance or 丢台马. So you have those stances. Easy way to remember is you go through the sequence. Now if you look at the set, the mobility consists of footwork that primarily is not different from fencing, because we're dealing with occupied space and maximizing the distance. So because we have the distance carrying long weapons, not too many times we need to actually step forward. So the footwork primarily is done in a free fighting format. Okay, you see this is called step slide. So in actuality, in 六点半棍, the footwork also consists of step slide. Okay, so you have step slide, you have turning. Okay, so we call this the half step footwork, rather than you taking a full step forward. Okay, so the stances and footwork, some of the very fundamentals in the Shaolin stances, because in old days, really, the weapons and empty hand are learned and taught simultaneously. In the basic hand form, we have 一击 Kamehameha, where 六点半棍 is more natural. We call this neutral stance. Okay, the knees are not straight. Okay, the hip are still tilt forward. It's supported. The body is supporting. It's called neutral stance. Now, footwork and moving forward, you actually have seen it already. Moving forward, moving backwards. This is advancing and retreating. Moving up or moving back. Okay, as well as angling left and right. And last, we have what we call 丢台马. So again, forward, backwards, angles, up, and back. In the pole form, we have 殺棍. It's a downward motion on the pole. We have 攔棍. Okay, 攔棍. And we have 丟棍. Then from here, with 丟台馬, dang, tilt. We have 攤, fook, 綁, 收棍. So those are the main techniques. So you have seen the basic stances, the movement, the footwork, as well as the individual techniques. But the problem with the form sequence is every family is different. So then the beginner student or student that's learning this form always asks, so which version is correct? Again, as I introduced the concept of the form, the key is in the 六點半棍 concept. It's not in the sequence or how many techniques that you have. But nonetheless, you need to know what's involved with the stances, footwork, as well as the individual techniques. All the basic techniques, sát quân, sát quân, sát quân, loạn quân, loạn quân, loạn quân, loạn quân, loạn quân. Biu, biu. This is upper body kung fu. Then you add the whole body. Sát quân, sát quân, sát, biu, loạn. So you see now you can add the body, the footwork. So there are no fixed patterns. It's based on sequence of training. So individually, tan, come, or fuk, biu. So you can repeat those combination techniques in any sequence to really sharpen up your forms and understand the sequence. Later, you must know the applications. Next, I'm going to talk about the concept. One time ago, there's a Wing-Chun movie just came out. They talk about Lok Din Guan. And this movie shows the master doing the pole. And when he hits the wall, it makes 6 holes, round holes. One of the technique, it hits the wall, makes half of the hole. So therefore the pole is called 6.5 point pole. But that is the movie version, what is Lok Din Guan. So there are always some explanations. The name is the concept. It's not about techniques. Hopefully in this chart, we can see why we call Lok Din Guan. Let's start with the techniques of Guan. Look at the biu. The area of the weapons is basically right here. So we call that din. Anytime you have ability to use or circumstances where you use the tip of the pole, the concept is called din. So in other words, if I biu, thrust, bang, tilt, all those 3 techniques could be using the concept of din. That's the first point. Lok din, that's the first point. So 6.5 point, this is the first point. So let's continue. Then tilt. You also use the middle part of the pole. Tilt, you could be hitting the guy's arm as he's carrying the weapons. So not necessarily the tip. So you could have different technique, but also express different concepts. Let's go into the next point. We call sát. It's basically a downward motion. Okay? It's a downward motion. How you destroy your opponent's weapon as well as your opponent's applying a downward motion. That, again, is using the middle part of the pole. Okay, the next series, right, is the up, tilt. When you see the forms, you have up, down, but this is the standard of dang tilt. Sometimes your up motion could be both hands up or both hands down. Okay, this expresses the concept of down and up, the points. So if you go to point number 4, is keep. That means the opponent's center line. Or as the center line strike is coming in, you parry it. So we call it keep. The part of the weapon is again is the front half of the body. So you have tan, okay? You have ball, okay? So guan. All this is, if you use those techniques as a way to redirect, to open up, to redirect, then you're expressing the key concept. A lot of people are confused with the technique's name. They think the 6.5 point is somewhere around here. It's not in the technique, it's in the concepts. For example, foot guan could be cover, which is part of the concept of lan. Okay? Or it could be a running, which is zao. Okay? So if somebody hits my pole, I run. So look like you're doing foot guan, but actually that's also the concept is when you apply it, what is the theory behind it is actually zao guan. So you got your hin guan and zao guan, running pole and circle pole. Then 6 is a point, a concept you use almost the full length of the pole. Okay, if somehow the opponents got in, I can obstruct, brace myself using the second half of the pole. Or I can obstruct using the first half of the pole. So in other words, the point number 6 utilizes the whole length of the pole. So the concept expresses the applications. What is the intent? There could be much more techniques to express those concepts and intent. So that's why when we practice a form, you cannot say, well, if you have this technique, then it's the right form. If you don't have this technique, it's the wrong form. Each family has a different set of techniques. But the universally, what we call 6.5 is based on the concept. So total, actually, there's 7 concepts. The last one is half. The half point is called flow or called lao. Now, imagine you learn so many techniques, right? But you cannot connect them. You're not going to be able to apply your technique. Now, if you can connect them, but you cannot flow, that means you get stuck. For example, when you practice the form, the fixed pattern, you get stuck because it's fixed. So when you practice the form, it's fundamentals. Later on, you got to train it with live energy or live opponents. So therefore, in order to connect all the points, you must have the 7th point. That is the half point. Now, why do we call half a point? Imagine this 6th point is 50% of the game. And then the connection is the rest of the 50%. Therefore, it's called 6.5. Because without this last concept, lao or flow, you don't have a half point, or that means half of it is missing. So that's why we call it 6.5 concept. And concepts are expressed through the numbers of techniques, from build all the way to line. Okay, you notice flow is not a technique. It's the ability to connect all those techniques and be able to express it where it's not fixed. So in this chart, you can understand, okay, what is technique? And then really, what area are you using in one of the pole? And then last, what is the name of 6.5? Okay? Wing Chun is a complete system. We start from an empty hand. Right from the beginning, there is a concept in the empty hand, which I explained in my sitting top series. One of the core concepts called center line. Okay? Now, if you imagine you carry a long weapon and you overshoot your defense, or you just thrust forward and doesn't have a center line reference, for long weapon combat, you're not going to be effective. As a matter of fact, it opens up your defense. Okay? And there are no second chances when you carry a long weapon like that. That's why in Wing Chun we have the saying, guan mo liang hiang. There are no two sounds. One move, most of the time, it determines the outcomes already. So, besides the meaning of 6.5, most of the core concept is actually from weapons, center line. Okay, this is one example. And second, if you remember all the basic exercise we've done is to strengthen our mechanics, our structures. Again, through carrying a long weapon and heavy weapon, you find out what is good structure, what is a weak structure. Okay, and then fully develop your body where not only you have a high stance within the 6 gate, now you have a traditional stances, which again points back to the roots of Shaolin. Okay, now I'm going to go through the Lok Din Bun Guan form step by step. This is called Sat Guan. Okay, Sat is downward expression of the pole. It's a concept. So that means you could be using the tip or the body or even this part based on the ranges. Okay, so it's a concept. Biu, Dang Til. Okay, so Biu, Dang Til, it could be as a technique. Okay, but it belongs to the concept of Dim, first concept. Now, if I go Dang and Til using the body, then it becomes the concept of Tai and Sa. So again, try to understand the difference between technique and concept. So we go through 3 sequences. Build, then, tilt, then it's 圈棍, 走棍, or 腹棍. Okay? Hand and the moving is where you parry and move the pole to get the right angle. So this is a concept we call 走棍. So those are the techniques. So you go through 3 sequences. On the way back, lock ma, moving back, then tilt, then tilt, then tilt. So with the tilt time on. From there, we go off to the angle tan. This is tan, which is part of the concept keep, to open or to redirect. Then same sequence, fork, build, okay? Tan, so guan. So that's why each sequence, or actually each teacher might have variation. My teacher in Yip Man system is Grandmaster Mu Yet. And also I have a fortunate training experience with Grandmaster Yip Ting. Grandmaster Yip Ting does not do the tan, where Grandmaster Mu Yet does the tan. Again, this type of small difference is on sequence, but they cover all the concepts. So, tan, so, fork, build, then tilt, then tilt, again here, fork, build, then tilt. Same sequence. Coming back, then it's bong one, fork one with a front stance, build, come back, bong one, lan one, then sak one. So the step-by-step, you can start to see the technique, but it's important. Technique is not the same as the concept. But throughout the whole form, you express this, all 6 points. The connection, the flow is the half point. Let's break down the sequence again. 4 sequence. Sa, build, then, tilt, 走棍, 圈棍, fork, then repeat. Now this is the first sequence going forward. Second sequence going back. Okay, hao ma or lock ma, then build one, then tilt. Lock ma build one, then tilt. Lock ma build one, then tilt. So 3 step up and 3 step back. So the third sequence, moving to my right, tan, so fork, build, then tilt. So you notice, off to the corner, but by the time I come back to dang tilt, I'm back to center line straight again. So the third sequence. Now, the fourth sequence moving to my left. So 2 sequences, 2 steps here. Then back, then tilt. Bong guan, lan guan, sak guan. So completely you have up sequence, down, moving back, right, left, finishing move.
Does the sequence of training matter for the pole practice?
This is a very good question. In the modern day Wing Chun, such as the Yip-Man system, most of the weapons are practiced last, such as the pole and the knife. You go through Silim Tao, Tangpei Biuji, and Muk and Zong before you get to the weapons. There are many reasons for that. Number one could be the teacher's methodology, such as the Yip-Man, due to his geographical locations and many reasons. Maybe he taught the weapons last. That this is a methodology. So it's not really a right or wrong things. Number two, in the past, this system comes from Shaolin or any type of old fighting system that is dealing with reality of fighting, that you have to really pick up the weapons right from the beginning. Just like today, we join the military. We don't learn hand-to-hand combat first. We learn how to shoot first. So most of the practical system of the past, you learn weapons and hand-to-hand combat simultaneously. So the way that I teach my students is that we teach the weapons fundamentals, as you've seen through the tape, basic exercise, basic movements, simultaneously with the hand-to-hand combat. So again, if you want to base on more of a natural progression based on history, is you can do the weapons and hand-to-hand combat at the same time. Or you follow a certain family lineage. If your teacher taught you a certain way, you can carry on that traditions. So in my mind, the sequence is not so important, as long as you get the complete pictures.
So then where does the history of the pole originate from?
Now this is more of dealing with the history. Number one, history is not 100% because we don't have a time machine. Most of the history is based on legends or writing that are really not historical writings. So there are primarily two sources of information that explain about the pole. If we go back to the old days where Wing Chun comes from Shaolin, and Shaolin Temple is known for its pole techniques, but particularly in the Qing Dynasty and Ming Dynasty period, there were a period of time where the southern Shaolin Temple were combined force with the military people in the south to fight off the Japanese pirates. Now there was well documented where the generals and military people have introduced many long weapons to the Shaolin monks, such as the spear. So there are certain Wing Chun lineage today that is based on the Shaolin spear and then change and adapt into pole techniques. So it contain the elements of spear and pole. So as progressively we move into modern day, such as the opera days, this is in the middle of 1800s, then you see the elements of today's Lok Din Pun Guan start taking into shape. Number one, the weapon gotten heavier, okay, and then the sequence, what you see today is like Yip-Man's form of Din Pun Guan start taking shape. I believe that has to do with, again, geographical locations, such as the Red Boat. Again, based on legends, Leung Yidai was very proficient with his pole. And being in a Red Opera on the boat, they used long poles to steer as well as to push the boat in shallow waters. So that might be one of the reasons where the pole gotten heavier. So the structure and technique have also changed. So primarily there are those two identity of the Shaolin Wing Chun pole. One is still contain the old Shaolin identity of the pole form. The second is modern day Lok Din Pun Guan, where it becomes the heavy weapon what we see today. But the origins still go back to the Shaolin.
Why are there so many variations in the pole forms?
Now, hopefully this table will give you the answer already. As I mentioned, if you go after each family and you look at their sequence, you will see variations, and the variations due to these techniques. Okay, for example, Grandmaster Yip Jing, he does not have the tan, where Grandmaster Moyet have the tan. So if you follow a certain sequence, almost every family I come across, I have seen to 17, Yip Jing, Yip Zhen, Makbo, Moyet, and many other sifus in Wing Chun's pole form, and they are all different. But the difference, again, is in the techniques. The key is that we don't want to look at the variation of technique. Is that we have to look, does the form contain the original 6.5 point concept? So again, the key question is that as long as the concept is there, you can have many variations. As a matter of fact, some of the most important concepts of Wing Chun created because of the long weapon. For example, if you think about the center line, if I carry a long weapon, and if you don't have your center line, okay, fighting a long weapon, that means you really don't have a reference to be efficient. Okay, if you're just going all over the places and somebody comes in with long weapon, you're not going to be able to stop that. And number two is really the gate theories. Okay, so as we talk about the Wing form, you have the 6 gates, but in this form here, Lục Tiên Bùn Quan, you see the body are all turned sideways. So the gate theory is still there. It's just that when I'm holding a long weapon, I turn sideways. So now you have the upper, middle, and the lower gates. So you have the 3 gates facing rather than the 6 gate facing. So the gate theory and center line is one of the key concepts of the pole, which really influence the rest of the empty hand systems. So I believe that this concept originated from the pole before it got to the empty hands, and which is one of the core concept of the Wing Chun. So again, variations is due to variation in technique. The important thing is focus on concepts. Again, this is the main focus of this Lục Tiên Bùn Quan series. For example, till, biu. So you might say, well, those are 3 techniques, but actually they express the first point. Okay, if I use biu, okay, as a spear or smack your feet, okay, or break your jawbone, I'm using the tip of the pole as the main form of attack. That's the first point. So, but it could be expressed in the forms of 3 techniques. Biu, dang, till. Okay? Now, if I have a motion that goes down with the tip, that becomes dim. Now, if I have a motion that goes down, but using the body of the guan, that becomes the second point. That's the downward energy using the body to express the techniques. So sometimes we call this point sa. Okay? So you might say, well, I see this as more like a line. Well, line is the next point where it expresses occupy and fence off the space. So in concept, it's different from where you're coming down to destroy your opponent's limbs or weapons. So again, the movement might be the same, or you might call it different technique, but the concepts are very different. So again, line. I could have a line where I brace off with this end of the pole to fence off to occupy space, or I could be line with using the first half of the pole. I could be line down, I could be line going up, I could be line going down, because line expresses occupied space. As long as I occupy my areas, that's more of what we call line concept. So that's 3 points right there. Okay, the next point is tight. So if you have a downward motion, you can attack, have upward motion. So if I hit with the body of the pole going up, that's tight. So not necessarily that's where you're using the tip. So again, okay, the movement might look similar, but the concept is different. So here you have 4 right now. You have the point, the very ending of the pole. Then you have the body to destroy going down, destroy going up, and then to brace, fence off, to occupy space using the whole pole. So that's the 4 point. The 5th point, where you are talking about incoming energy, where you direct, okay, you sweep, okay, redirect. So tan, fuk, so guan, bong guan, all those techniques are redirect. We call that keep or continue to parry. Okay, so they're actually the same point but different techniques. So that's the 5th point. Then last you have the 6th point, where you're dealing with a lot of motions, where you're going back and forth. For example, if I go fuk, this is actually running. Okay, somebody chopped my stick down, I run on top and hit his hands. So actually it looks like a fuk technique, but actually that's called zhao guan. So it's called running pole. That's the 6th concept. So when you string all the 6 together, that connection, that is called a half point. Because if you put 6 of those concepts together, that's only half of the picture. The other half is the connection. So we call that 6.5. So again, I hope that this gave you guys a new insight into the 六点半棍. Again, Kung Fu, Wing Chun, or any type of martial art, we get our guidance from the experienced teachers and masters, but one of the most important teachers is our own experience and then our own understanding. So don't forget that we have to gain the experience, understand the concepts, and be humble enough to have an open mind to receive teaching from someone with more experience. Thank you very much for watching this 六点半棍 series. This is number 9. Hopefully you have gained a new insight, and with your guidance from your own sifu as well as your own practice, I wish you the best of luck in this 六点半棍 series. The next series, which is 10, I intend to do the Bazam Do. And then after that, future series would be strictly on Wing Chun fighting applications, which includes the open hands as well as the weapons, the two-man weapon sets, as well as Qi Guan and all type of applications. So again, thank you and have a best of luck in training.
DC Media brings you the finest demo and instructional videos from Tiger Claw and Kung Fu Magazine.